It is imperialism and ethnic cleansing together. It is insane, is the only word I can think of to describe what this means politically in the world that we live in. We see President Trump, who's been in office for a very short time, talk about taking over Greenland, taking over the Panama Canal, turning the Gaza Strip into an American Riviera. This is a world gone upside down. This is just crazy. This man is unpredictable, unreliable, unprincipled. We have no idea where he's leading.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Standing beside Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu, President Trump has declared that he wants to take over and own Gaza, clear the land of the Gazan people, and develop it as a Riviera of the Middle East. This is the second time the US president has spoken about clearing Gaza. To many, this smacks of imperialism. To several, it smacks of ethnic cleansing. Joining me now is the Middle East director of the International Communities Organization and the negotiator who secured the release of Gilad Shalit in 2011, Gershon Baskin. Dr. Baskin, standing beside the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, President Trump has said he wants to take over and own Gaza, clear the land of all Gazan people, and then develop it. And he also seemed to suggest that the majority of the Gazan people would not be allowed to return. Let me begin by asking, how do you respond to that?
Well, I think in your opening, I would make one correction. It's not that some call it imperialism and others call it ethnic cleansing. It is imperialism and ethnic cleansing together. It is insane, is the only word I can think of to describe what this means politically in the world that we live in. We see President Trump, who's been in office for a very short time, talk about taking over Greenland, taking over the Panama Canal, turning the Gaza Strip into an American Riviera. This is a world gone upside down. This is just crazy.
Now, this is the most radical statement we've ever heard from a US government. Where does it leave the two-state solution, which has been US policy up till now? Do you get the feeling that President Trump, without specifically saying so, has actually turned his back on it?
We don't know. This man is unpredictable, unreliable, unprincipled. We have no idea where he's leading. There are some who suggested that just as he threatened Canada and Mexico with 25% tariffs, and then 2 days later turned around and said, we've negotiated a border deal with them now and we won't impose those tariffs. There are people who suggested that he threw out this idea of evacuating Gaza in order to compel Hamas to understand that they have to leave Gaza. We don't know where this is heading. What we do know is that Trump has his eyes focused on Saudi Arabia. The Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has talked about $600 billion of Saudi investments in the United States. President Trump responded that he plans to bring that up to $1 trillion. We know that the Saudis are maintaining very firm on their determination that there will be no normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel without the creation of an independent Palestinian state next to Israel. We don't know if the Saudis will enter into any kind of deals with the Americans that will leave the Palestinian question and Israel on the side. Right now, I would say that from a perspective of someone who believes that the only solution for Israel and the Palestinians is a two-state solution, a fair, viable, equitable two-state solution, that Saudi Arabia right now is our biggest hope.
But let me put this to you at this point. There is a view expressed by many people on channels like the BBC. Don't take Trump literally, but take him seriously. A, do you believe there's some kernel of truth in that view? And secondly, what would it mean in these present circumstances not to take him literally, but only seriously?
I would say we have to take him cautiously. I don't know what Donald Trump has in store. I'm not sure that he knows. As I said, this man is totally unpredictable. He is untraditional, controversial, pulls out ideas out of a hat where, I don't know, put those ideas into his head. Certainly, Prime Minister Netanyahu was smiling from ear to ear hearing that. And part of our tragic reality is that about 70% of the Israeli public supports the idea of evacuating the Gaza Strip. This is a horrific reality of the state of Israel after October 7, 2023, where this war has been waged on the people of Gaza as a war of revenge. And now the final revenge is the Israeli people want to see these people evacuated there. Many of the Israelis want to see Israeli settlements built in that area and join with Donald Trump in building casinos and hotels and real estate development projects that the Palestinian people would never get to enjoy.
You know, you've put your finger on a fundamental truth. What Trump has said, upside down world as it may be, crazy as it may be, unpredictable as it may be, does touch a chord that strikes a resonant note with a lot of people in Israel. He's very close to Israel as a country. He's very close to Netanyahu in particular. And what he said echoes Ben Gvir's views about Gaza migration. It's been welcomed by Smotrich. Is this a huge victory for the far right in Israel?
I would say it's a huge victory for people who live by the emotion of hate and despair. It is not a victory for the people of Israel or for the leaders of Israel. It is a defeat for anyone who believes that this world is a world where we can live in peace with each other, where we can have neighborly relations, where our interests coincide with the mutual good of both people living on this land. This is a very small piece of territory between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, and there are two peoples living here who claim it as their homeland. There can be no solution when one side wants to evict the other from this land. There can only be a solution when one people embrace the other and say, we are neighbors, we need to find out how to live together and to work for the mutual benefit of each other here. There is no other solution. Otherwise, we live in a very ugly world, a world of no hope, a world where we are promising our children more death and destruction.
Let's look for a moment at the view as it seems from the Arab side. Egypt, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia have categorically said that they will not countenance Gazans being sent into their countries. They will not accept Gazans as refugees in their state. Are you worried that Trump could arm twist them into changing their positions? After all, there is a sizable amount of aid that is given by America to Egypt and Jordan. If you were to threaten to cut it off, it might force their hand.
No, I don't think that it would force their hand on this issue. And I think that there is consensus in the Arab world that this cannot happen. This must not happen. And there is enough money in the Arab world to compensate Egypt or other countries who receive American aid and to replace it with aid from the Saudis, from Qatar, from the United Arab Emirates. There is enough money in the region to push back Trump on this horrible idea. I don't believe that any Arab state will agree to this plan and work hand in hand with the Americans to do it. I don't believe that the European Union will. I don't believe that the countries in Asia will work with the United States on this plan. This is a threat to the rule of law around the world. This is implementing a crime against humanity. I agree that people all around the world should have the right to decide where they want to live, but not every country opens its doors to everyone who wants to move somewhere else. There are rules and regulations about immigration, and there's no question that life in Gaza is hell, that Gaza was bombed to destruction, that there is no infrastructure, and reconstruction is going to take a very long time, and people are suffering there. The world needs to gather together to come up with a plan that will enable Gaza to be built rapidly, to provide temporary housing while people are living in tent cities. And now we're having a horrible rainstorm right here with very strong winds. And I'm sure that many of the hundreds of thousands of Gazans overnight have had their tents blown away, and they're sitting in puddles of water and mud in Gaza right now. This needs to concern us all, including people in Israel. These are our neighbors, and these are human beings who, even if some of them were Hamas and some of them supported what Hamas did, they deserve the right to live a decent life.
You began this answer by suggesting that Trump's statements have built up a huge body of opposition to him that he may not know how to contend with. The Arab states, the EU, many European countries, much of Asia and Africa. He's built up a body of opposition that internationally would be the majority of the world, and he doesn't know how to handle it.
That's true, but we have to recall also that we have a broken political international system where 14 members of the United Nations Security Council can want something, and the United States can raise its hand and veto and declare that what the rest of the world want is not going to happen. So we need other systems of working and other points of pressure, other ways for the international community to work together, probably this time against what the United States wants. The United States, in doing what it's planning to do under Donald Trump, maybe needs to be isolated by the rest of the world. And rather than leaders running after Donald Trump and Elon Musk to gain their favor and their dollars, need to work together to get through these next 4 years and hope that America will come to its senses once again.
The problem is, what Trump said about Gaza was not the only solitary note that is ominous, worrying, and disturbing. At the same press conference, President Trump also seemed to suggest that in possibly as little as 4 weeks, America could accept Israel's annexation of the West Bank. If that were to happen, it would be a death blow to the concept of a two-state solution. How do you respond to this second potential dagger?
Not only would it be a death blow to the two-state solution, it would also probably bring about the end of the peace agreements between Israel and Jordan, Israel and Egypt, Israel and the United Arab Emirates, Israel and Bahrain, Israel and Morocco. Israel is becoming a pariah state in the world. It will be a pariah state in the region, where through the work of Donald Trump 4 years ago, who helped to negotiate the Abraham Accords, opened up the doors of Israel to many more countries in the region and the world, and that process will end. Israel will become isolated in the world, in the Middle East. It will have difficulty in its relations with the rest of the world, I believe, and that Israelis, who have a passion for traveling around the world, will find themselves not welcomed in many countries around the world.
But it's not just the Abraham Accords and the relationships that Israel has established with Arab countries during the last 7-8 years that would be in danger. What about the ceasefire agreement with Hamas, negotiated by Egypt, Qatar, and the United States? Now, after this bizarre announcement about clearing out Gaza, owning it and taking it over and throwing the Gazans out, where does that ceasefire agreement stand? Will it continue? Might it collapse? And is there any prospect of phase 2 happening?
It's very likely that if Israel were to annex parts of the West Bank, that agreement would collapse, the ceasefire would collapse, and the fate of the remaining Israeli hostages in Gaza would be unknown for a very long time. This is a tragic reality for the society of Israel, which has built itself with an ethos that we don't leave anyone behind, that we are dedicated to bring all of our loved ones back from places of war, that there is a commitment, a moral responsibility to the state of Israel to do everything possible to bring these hostages home, and Israel would be a broken state from within. I can tell you, as a father of adult children, that my children ask themselves every day, what kind of future do I have in this country? Where are we going? What kind of country is this going to be? And I think that many people like myself are talking to their children and their families and questioning whether or not this is the country that we work so hard to build and to defend.
How widely spread is that sentiment in Israel? How many people are actually questioning their future, their country's future, and what that country now seems to suggest it's going to be?
Right. I don't know that the numbers are what's significant here. What is significant is the who, because the people who are questioning that are the backbone of this economy, Israel's high-tech economy, Israel's genius in developing businesses and trading with the world, in making Israel the economic power that it is. Those are the people who are questioning whether or not this is the country that they want to continue to live in and to raise their children in. Now, many of these people have marketable skills that are welcome in many countries around the world. Many of them can work remotely, even for the companies that they are continuing to work with. And people are questioning, if this is the direction that we're heading in, is this really the kind of place where I want to live and raise my family?
If they were to leave, it would bring Israel down to its knees.
We have trends in this country that are bringing Israel down to its knees. We have a large segment of our population, the ultra-Orthodox, who don't work, who don't serve in the army, who don't study in topics like English and mathematics and science, the subjects which enable them to enter into the 21st century economy. They are dependent on welfare from the state, who pay for them not to work. And they are increasing in their power in the country and increasing in their numbers in the country. And this puts Israel in a very, very dangerous path in terms of our own ability to sustain the kind of lifestyle that Israelis have become accustomed to.
You're talking about ultra-Orthodox Hasidic Jews.
Right. Hasidic are one part of the community. It's a big community, very diverse, but it's a large segment of Israel's economy, and their power and their numbers are growing.
Before we end, Dr. Baskin, let me go back to something you mentioned earlier and raise the question, does it suggest confusion or contradiction in Trump's thinking? I'm talking about his relationship with Saudi Arabia. On the one hand, Trump is talking about owning and taking over Gaza and clearing the Gazan people out. And that would deeply offend the Saudis. The statement their ministry issued yesterday makes that more than clear. On the other hand, we know that Trump's dream is an Israel-Saudi Arabian accord, but the Saudis have made it clear in that statement of yesterday that it can only happen with the establishment of a Palestinian state. And the Saudis have said this is their firm and unwavering position. So when you bear in mind the two different things that Trump is saying and talking about, do you get the feeling that he's got caught up in his own contradictions? Or has some sort of significant U-turn happened in his thinking? Because he was the man who battled to make that ceasefire happen before he became president, and now he's the same man who seems to be threatening its future.
We don't really know. He might have battled to get that ceasefire in place because he understands that he can't take over Gaza and remove its population if Hamas remains in place there and if the war is actively going on. So he may have seen that his first mission, his first step on the road to controlling Gaza, making Gaza the 51st state of the United States or a Virgin Island or whatever, Puerto Rico of the United States, is to end the war in Gaza and then open the doors to Gaza. You know, it's reported today in Israel that the Ministry of Defense, the Minister of Defense has ordered the army to develop plans to enable Gazans to leave. Now, in the reality that Gazans are living, many of them want to leave. Many of them don't see how they can remain in Gaza. But there aren't so far countries that are willing to take them. There may be people who want to leave. The push is certainly there. The pull from other countries is not yet there. I haven't heard volunteers from other countries of the world saying, come, we want you to enter our country. 160,000 Gazans exited Gaza to Egypt, each of them paying $5,000 to some corrupt organization, Egyptian Gazan Hamas organization, to leave. Someone got very, very wealthy from enabling 160,000 Gazans to be in Cairo right now, but the Egyptians want them to leave. The Egyptians didn't grant them residency there. In fact, most of them, if not all of them, are not allowed to work there. They have no ability to sustain themselves in Egypt. And this is right next door. Egypt doesn't want them. And Egypt believes that taking them would be a death blow to the Palestinian cause, which in the Arab world, in the south of our planet, is a holy issue. The Palestinians are seen as symbolic of the struggles of peoples for freedom and liberation and for sustaining themselves and prosperity. And I don't believe that any country in the South would agree to accept them. And I don't see countries like Germany or Austria or Great Britain or Spain or any of these countries opening up their doors to 1.5 million Palestinian refugees from Gaza. So I think that the reality is that we have to look at ourselves directly in the mirror. We have to look at Gaza and the reality of Gaza, and we need to do everything possible to, one, ensure that Hamas won't continue to govern Gaza, that the Palestinians are free to choose their own representatives, knowing that if they do choose Hamas, they're destined to live in the death and destruction and ruin that they're living in. But they need to be given the choice and the understanding that they can actually develop their Riviera for themselves and not for Donald Trump and his son-in-law.
The irony, Dr. Baskin, is if there is any country in the world that can be made to accept up to 2.3 million Palestinians from Gaza, it's America itself. Donald Trump can order it, it accepts it, but he's reluctant to do it. It would shatter his popularity in his country.
That's right. I wrote sarcastically after hearing the Trump speech that the Gazans are people who live on a beautiful coast with very nice beaches, but it's very small. And now the newly named Gulf of America has wonderful beaches that are not very heavily populated in the state of Florida. And if Trump is so magnanimous to tell the Gazans they should find a better life somewhere else, perhaps Florida is the solution for them.
My last question, Dr. Baskin. The truth is, we have 4 more years of Trump. To be honest, 3 years, 11 months, and some more days. If this is how his second presidency has begun, how worried are you about how it might end?
I'm very worried. I spoke on American media before the elections and noted that, in my estimation, Donald Trump is the most dangerous person in the world. There was a brief period here for a couple of weeks after he forced Netanyahu into the ceasefire agreement that I thought that perhaps Trump was going to be our savior. Now looking at what he's doing in the United States, together with Elon Musk, in limiting American democracy, in creating a dictatorship in America, in closing the doors to 40,000 federal workers in Washington already in these first days of his administration, of closing down USAID, which does God's work around the world in nutrition and health and children's health and so many other areas that are so important of American aid around the world. This is a tragedy unfolding before our eyes, and I have pity on the American people, and I have pity and fear for the rest of the world.
You've summed it up beautifully with that one phrase that you used in this answer. I think it communicates to the audience precisely what you feel. Donald Trump is the most dangerous person in the world, and clearly that is coming to the fore in a dramatic way with his statements about Gaza and its implications and consequences for Israel, for Arabs, for the rest of the world.
What I would like to say, though, just before my last sentence is, because I'm so fearful of what's ahead of us, I just want to say that I pray to God that I'm wrong.
Indeed, I would imagine most people would join you in that prayer. Dr. Baskin, thank you very much for making time for me. Thank you very much for your honest and forthright opinions. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.